I want to tell you a story about my first speech, and it is not a pleasant memory. I had just passed my real estate exam and was new to being a realtor. This was after I'd left Hollywood with my tail between my legs and decided, well, I need to do something else. What can I do? And I became a realtor. Well, I'd been going to these real estate networking breakfasts every Wednesday morning. And at every one of these meetings, they had a speaker for 20 minutes. And they sucked. I mean, these people were really bad. Well, I get it. They were appraisers and lawyers, mortgage lenders, property inspectors, and well, just about anyone they could find that would speak for free for 20 minutes. And week after week, as I watched these people, I thought to myself, well, I could do that. I mean, I was an actor for crying out loud. So there I was a couple of months later at 8 a.m. on a Wednesday morning in a hotel meeting room, standing behind a podium, giving my first speech. And I was terrified. I don't know what I said. I don't know what I was talking about, and I don't know how I got through it. For one thing, I had trouble breathing. I mean, I felt like there was an elephant sitting on my chest, and I didn't know what to do with my hands. It was really strange. It's like, what do I do with my hands? And my mouth was dry. You know, that cotton mouth thing? The whole thing was like an out-of-body experience. And when it was over, I had to ask someone how I did, because I literally had no idea what I said. It was as if I was in a cave and I could hear my voice talking and I could see people, but it's like I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was saying. And when I got into my car, I just sat there trying to figure out what the heck had just happened. Why was I so nervous? But not just nervous. It was way worse than nervous. What I've come to realize over time, because I thought about this a lot, is that I so wanted everyone to like me and accept me that I lost myself in the process, that I gave over my power to fear. Can you relate to what I'm saying? Can you relate to that feeling of panic, of so wanting to be accepted, to be liked, that you lose something of yourself, of your power in the process? Welcome to the Storytelling That Sticks for Business and Life 20-minute podcast. I'm your keynote and story coach, Doug Stevenson. In this episode, I'm going to focus on something foundational to speaking and storytelling, your sense of self at the front of the room, or wherever and whenever you're asked to speak. I'm talking about your core essence, your inner strength, your belief in yourself, that you have something to say, and how that sense of self gets challenged when you find yourself standing in front of an audience, looking out at a bunch of faces staring back at you, knowing that you're being evaluated, judged. It can be a very scary place to be, would you agree? But for some of us, not all of us, but for some of us, it's exactly where we want to be, where we know we're supposed to be. The question is, how do we deal with these two opposing forces? The part of us that is confident and brave and wants to stand at the front of the room and be seen and heard, and the other more hidden part that is insecure and worried about how we'll be received. Well, since that first speech, that horrifying experience over 35 years ago, I've learned a lot about myself, about the insecurities that are lurking beneath the surface of my bravado, and how those insecurities, those deep-seated doubts about my worthiness, can sneak up and sabotage me like they did with my first speech. My main goal with you here today is to talk about what seldom gets talked about: ego, self-esteem, insecurity, imposter syndrome, courage in the face of fear and panic, the fear of making a fool of yourself, or of being seen as too full of yourself, or too opinionated, or too whatever, fill in the blank, too whatever. Now, in my case, and I got to be honest here, it was often I was too silly, too loud and obnoxious, which is not true, but that's the insecurity speaking. This is what I say to myself now before every speech or presentation. This is how I calm myself down and give myself permission to bring all of myself, my knowledge and my wisdom, my big personality and sense of humor. I say to myself, okay, Douglas, no brag, no apology. This is what I know. Let's go. And then I step out and begin. No brag, no apology. This is what I know. Let's go. Now, if you feel that you learned something valuable in today's podcast, please click on the follow or subscribe button. As a speaker, you're guaranteed to make someone uncomfortable, to piss someone off, or to have someone disagree with you if you take a position, if you take a stand and have a strong opinion about something. And you know what? So what? So what? You're not here on this earth to please everyone or to be liked by everyone. You can't be a successful speaker or give a meaningful speech if you're worried about being liked, not offending someone or pushing someone's buttons. You know what? I've always felt that it's my job to push people's buttons, to be a little provocative, to push the envelope. Because if you play it safe, if you're worried about saying something that will offend someone, that someone will disagree with, you lose and so does your audience. You got to be willing to be confronted, to get pushback. Because for every person that disagrees with you, there are 10 people who agree with what you say, who are glad you said what you said, who love the story that you told. But you won't know that unless you take a stand. You know that old saying, right? If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. I want you to hear this and hear it real good. Safe is a very dangerous place to be. Safe sucks. Safe is not going to get you noticed. It won't get you promoted. It won't move the needle. A safe story does not change someone's life. Safe is for people who are content to live in the shadows. It's for people who accept less from life. Safe is not safe. It's dangerous. Is that what you want from life, or do you want more? Do you want to make a difference? Remember, safe is a very dangerous place to be. Now, I get it. I get it. Many of you work in a company or an organization where if you're too controversial, you get fired. I get it. I get it. You need to balance being opinionated with being smart, being pragmatic, because you want to keep your job and at the same time stand out. So how do you stand out when you're trying to blend in? It can't be done. No. Here's what I've learned. And I fully accept that I'm not your normal guy. I have never played it safe. I dropped out of college at 19 to be an actor. I hitchhiked to Hollywood with no idea I was going to make it work, and without knowing anyone in Los Angeles. That was crazy. And after leaving LA after 13 years because I didn't make it and moving to Colorado Springs and becoming a realtor, I started over. And I eventually built a lucrative and successful professional speaking, training, and coaching business by sheer will, hard work, and determination. But I do know this: standing up and standing out leads to some very big highs and some very low lows. Safe is a very dangerous place to be. You can't play it safe. So here are two examples of the highs and lows that I've experienced. So I got a call one day from a man in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. He'd seen me speak at a conference in the United States and wanted to have me come to Kuala Lumpur and train his trainers using my story theater method, which he also wanted to license for his company's exclusive use in Southeast Asia. When I got off the phone with him, I couldn't believe what had just happened. I had to get out a map and see where Malaysia was. I didn't even know where it was. Anyway, he agreed to fly Deborah and I in business class, no less, to Kuala Lumpur to do 4 days of train the trainer workshops and a couple of keynotes, and to purchase the rights to buy a license to teach my story theater methodology for 2 years. And get this, the whole deal, when it was all said and done, totaled out at $240,000. It was an amazing experience. My host was awesome. The audience members treated me like a rock star. Everything about that trip and how I received and the people, it was just wonderful. That was one of the highest highs. I'll never forget it. Now, that was one of the highs. Let's talk about the lows. One of the lowest lows came way before that, early on in my speaking career, before I was a storytelling speaker. I started out speaking with a keynote titled The Positive Power of Change, Get Over It. I was known as the Get Over It guy. And my keynote boiled down to one thing: change is happening. It's not going away. Get over it. So it was the morning of September 11th, 2001, around 6:30 a.m. I had just taken my seat on a plane. I mean, literally, I had just sat down when the flight attendant came over the PA system and made an announcement for everyone to leave the plane and go to baggage claim to get our luggage. What? What are you talking about? Get off the plane? What? I just sat down. Why? What was going on? I had a booking that night to deliver in Kansas City. How was I supposed to get there now? Was the flight going to be delayed? Well, as I walked back through the terminal, I saw on a TV screen the smoke billowing from the World Trade Center tower, from the plane that had just flown into it. And I heard that all flights nationwide had been grounded. It was 9/11. The second tower hadn't been hit yet, but my entire focus was getting to Kansas City to give my speech. I didn't know how the day was going to work out, but I knew I had a speech to give. Well, I called Deborah and I asked her to bring my car to the airport because I needed to drive to Kansas City. So she brought the car, I got in the car and I took off. And as I drove across the country from Colorado to Kansas City, I was trying to understand what the heck had just happened and hoping that I'd be able to make it to my speech on time. Well, by the time I got to Kansas City later that night, the speech had been moved to the following night. And as you can imagine, everyone, everywhere was in shock. So on the night of my keynote, in Arrowhead Stadium, the home of the Kansas City Chiefs football team, where the meeting was to take place, I was about to give my speech titled The Positive Power of Change, Get Over It, to a room full of people. And I had to decide if I should do the same speech with the same stories or to make last-minute changes. But it really didn't matter what I did or what I said. I had to stand there and speak into the shock and grief that I and everyone else was feeling. And I got to say, it was not my best effort. It just wasn't. I don't know what I did. I got through it. We all got through it. We all went on our way. But it was like I was speaking at a funeral. It was an awful experience. It was bad. It was just bad. So when I talk about the highs and lows, that was a low point for me. One of those days when it just doesn't work. You know what I mean? For whatever reason, the audience, the room, the situation, where you feel that you failed to live up to the moment. Sometimes you're going to feel like you can do no wrong. And other days you will feel like nothing you do or say is working. And the strange thing is, the weird thing is, the same speech and the same stories work brilliantly one day and flop the next day. Being a professional speaker means that you create what amounts to a one-man show or a one-woman show, a 60-minute piece of educational entertainment, like a mini play. And you get hired based on the ideas you share and the lessons you teach, and of course, on the stories you tell. But the stories are there to teach life lessons, business lessons. But here's the deal. Every story you tell, every lesson you teach is based on your own opinion, your own perspective. And there are people who will agree with you and hire you and become your biggest fans. And there are people, lots of people, who do not like you or what you have to say. Like I said, highs and lows. You got to be willing to accept the highs and the lows. And the fact that there are people who will not like you and what you have to say goes back to what happened to me in my first speech. I was so worried about what people would think of me that I literally couldn't think straight. I couldn't breathe. I'm going to flip the subject a little bit here to what I really want to talk about. Now, I'd never heard about codependency until I was in my 40s. Codependency is defined as an extreme need for approval and recognition. Well, that pretty much describes me for much of my 20s and 30s. I had suffered through a series of failed relationships with the woman I was choosing. And at one point, I realized that I was doing everything in my power to get women to like me, to approve of me, to choose me. And in the process, I was putting their needs and feelings ahead of my own. And what made me realize what a problem this was when I gave my first speech at a real estate breakfast. I was giving my power away to people that I wanted approval from. You cannot do that and be a successful speaker and storyteller. Well, in my first speech, I was so codependent. I was so scared. I was so worried about what they would think of me, but I just lost it. Now, when I step in front of an audience, I'm completely focused on staying present with myself, what I am doing and saying. I know that I'm good at what I do and that my content is strong. And if people like me and what I have to say, that's great. And if some of them don't like me or what I have to say, that's okay too, because I'm different. I'm not like anybody else. And my difference is my superpower. But I got to admit it, it took many years for me to get there. I'm not for everybody, and neither are you. You got to let that go. Over the 3 decades that I've been doing this, teaching storytelling and business, I've become aware that there are other storytelling and speaking coaches that disagree with my approach to speaking and storytelling. They actually contradict what I say and take a different stand. And you know what? I applaud them for that, because they are taking a stand based on their opinions and perspectives. I'm not playing it safe, and they're not playing it safe. In the world of professional speaking and training, your value is tied up in your content, your ideas, your methodology, what you teach that is different than what someone else teaches. I want you to hear the most important word in that sentence. The word is different. How are you different than someone else? What do you have to say that is different, perhaps contradictory to what someone else says? Your success as a speaker or a storyteller lies in your difference. And you know what? That's the easy part, because you are a one-of-a-kind, unique, and different person than anyone else. Here's a funny example of what I mean about being different. One day, I was in a shoe store shopping for some shoes, and there was this pair of red running shoes that caught my eyes. And something in me compelled me to buy those red running shoes and take them home, because red is powerful. It's bold. It's in your face. And I've always been bold and in your face. And those red shoes, they sat there in my closet for a year before I had the courage to put them in my suitcase and take them with me to a booking. And as I was getting dressed for my keynote in my proper corporate blue suit, I put my safe black shoes and my bold red shoes on the end of the bed. And I just stood there and I had to make a decision. Am I going to play it safe, or am I going to go bold? Well, you know what I did. I put on the red shoes, and I got up there on that stage in front of an all-military audience, by the way. I mean, these people were all military. They were in their like dress blues and dress whites, and I did my speech. And those red shoes made a difference in how I felt about myself. I had more fun. I felt more free. And a number of people came up to me afterwards and complimented me on the red shoes. They loved them. Now, for me at that moment, it was as if I said to myself, get out of your own way, Douglas. Get out of your own way. No more hiding. No more worrying about what people will think. Because when you show up in red shoes, you give them permission to show up in red shoes. Those red shoes were a game changer for me. Now, I know that some of you listening to me would like to be a professional speaker or trainer. Many more of you just want to use stories more effectively in your job, or maybe in your life, at a wedding or a church or synagogue or a community group. But the lesson I want you to take away from this is as much a life lesson as a speaking lesson. If you want to succeed in life, really succeed at accomplishing something important, you've got to be willing to fail, to take risks, to make mistakes, to get it wrong on the way to getting it right. But the one thing that will stop you dead in your tracks is if you need to be liked, to be accepted, to please everyone, because that is not possible. You are not for everyone. No one is. Codependency is a buzzkill in relationships, and it's a definite loser as a speaker. I want you to think about your favorite actors and actresses for a moment. Do you have a favorite? But someone else that you know doesn't like the same person that you love, or a singer or a comedian? Each of those entertainers has become wildly successful by being different, by being unique. And each of them will tell you in their interviews that they try not to read their reviews or the social media stuff about them because it's so brutal. They are who they are. They put themselves out there knowing that they're going to be targets for praise and humiliation. And I get it, because when I was an actor out there in Hollywood, I put myself out there and got some praise. I mean, I actually won an acting award. I had theater directors that cast me over and over again. But the truth is, not making it in Hollywood after giving it my all was humiliating. I put myself out there, but the casting directors in movie and TV, they basically took a look at me and said, no thanks, next. And yet, what did I do? Because I believed in myself, I got over it. Now, it took a while, but I got over it. And in the end, I repurposed everything that I learned as an actor and turned it into my story theater method. And the same skills and talents that got me nowhere in Hollywood made me a very successful speaker and storyteller. Think of it this way. You're on a journey, a vision quest to discover through trial and error, successes and failures, who you truly are and what you are meant to accomplish in this life. And by working on your stories, you're doing the most important work you can do in service of other people, because your stories reveal your truth. And with every story, you learn something about yourself, because you have to keep asking yourself, every time you craft a story, what the heck was that all about? Why did that happen? What did I learn from that? And more importantly, how can my story help someone else? How can the lesson of my story make a difference in someone else's life? I'm going to end this podcast with one life lesson that has been a game changer for me and for my students. And it's this. Are you ready? Love yourself and let them watch. Love yourself and let them watch. When you find yourself in that magical and wonderful space at the front of the room, where all eyes are on you, ready to receive you and what you have to share with them, love yourself, accept yourself, enjoy yourself, and let them watch you in all of your glory. No brag, no apology, not better or worse, just stand in your power, love yourself, and let them watch. Well, that's it for this episode. Now, once again, if you feel that you learned something valuable today, there's 3 things I'd like you to do. First, click on the follow or subscribe button. Second, share this podcast with 3 people. And third, leave a review wherever it is that you're listening to this podcast. And as always, I'd love to hear from you with your questions and comments. Let me know that you're out there listening and learning and applying what you've learned. And if you want help with your stories, if you need a coach for your keynote or TED Talks, please get in touch with me on LinkedIn or by sending an email to me at doug@dougstevenson.com. Thanks for listening. Until next episode, I'm your keynote and story coach, Doug Stevenson.